What's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. If you're ever in Minnesota and you run into legal issues, give me a call. We'll see what I can do for you. All right, today there have been some updates in the Mars Argo versus Titanic Sinclair and Poppy lawsuit. I want to go through those updates real quick. They're not really legal updates, as in we don't have filed documents in this case answering the claims or motioning to dismiss or any of that stuff. And that's probably the first thing that's going to happen is a motion to dismiss the claims before we get an answer. But we don't actually have that. In this case, we have some statements made by Poppy on Twitter. First, she released a prepared written statement, which we'll read through right here. You can see that next to me. After that, she released captions from the restraining order requests that she and Corey Mixter filed against a guy named Joshua Moran in 2015. These were not issued. They were not the restraining orders were not issued. However, we're going to talk about what that means and why she would bring this up and all of that stuff. Just some brief background. According to Poppy, I don't know anything about these people or their relationships or anything like that, other than that they create some sort of art and put it on YouTube. Okay? So I'm going to take Poppy at her word here. She says that Mars Argo is working with Joshua Moran now, and that she and Moran, as well as Mixter and Moran, have a history dating back to 2015. And I suppose it's possible that we may get some more information on that as things progress. But for now, we don't really have much more than just this. So I'm going to talk about this, what it means, what it's like to have this type of client, and what talk about Poppy's legal situation, all that stuff. If you want a full breakdown of this lawsuit, check out my other video, which has the full analysis. It's like an hour and a half. We read through the entire document. I think towards the end, I start getting a little lazy on some of the repeating phrases in the causes of action, but I explain that in there. And then make sure you watch. There are 2 supplemental videos that go with it. One is a correction on the domestic violence issue. I had the statute of limitations wrong because I don't practice in California. And so I made a correction and then reanalyzed that section of the lawsuit. And then the other one was an answer to several internet comments asking about comparing this case to a case involving Bette Midler and a case involving Tom Waits, and why I don't think that case is favorable for Mars Argo, despite some people pointing out some similarities in owning a persona and stuff like that. But check out those 2 videos as well. And then, if you are interested in this and you're just coming into the channel because of this, go ahead and subscribe and like and all that stuff. The typical things, because we're going to be following this case. And if you want to keep getting updates on the legal aspects of this Poppy case, Poppy versus Mars Argo, go ahead and subscribe and then, get the notifications so that when I do release a new video, you can check it out. Also, check out my other stuff. You may find it interesting. Tonight, I'm drinking gin. There are reasons. But let's get started. Let's get started right now. We're going to just jump right into this document. I have never spoken publicly before as Poppy, but I'm doing so now because I feel it is important to address these false accusations. So what she's doing here is immediately setting up something I talk about in the longer video. She's setting up a counter narrative of the same story, but a different factual scenario than what Mars Argo presented. And you find this very commonly in these lawsuits. That's why it's important not to take either document themselves as indicative of what actually happened, because the documents are going to be biased towards the writer, the author. In this case, Mars Argo has told her version of the story. You can bet that Poppy and Sinclair's version of the story is going to be probably wildly different. but we won't know until they actually release them. So my creative collaborator, Corey Mixter, and I were surprised to learn on TMZ that Brittany Sheets, who performs under the name Mars Argo, filed a lawsuit against us. Miss Sheets and her attorneys did not contact us before filing the lawsuit to discuss her accusations of copyright infringement and domestic violence, all of which are false. It would appear Miss Sheets was intent on building a publicity campaign around her filing of a complaint and was not interested in our lawyers first having a serious discussion about the merits of her claims. Let me clarify something here. Sheets, Mars Argo, however you want to refer to her, she has no duty to have her lawyers call Poppy's lawyers and they can hash it out like gentlemen. Sometimes that works. Right? Sometimes you don't want to file a document right away. You want to set the tone as less adversarial, and you have a collaborative solution. So you may contact the other attorney and say, hey, can we work this out? Look, we've got these issues. We know you've got your business, we've got our business, and we want to just make this happen without going through the expense and publicity of a giant lawsuit. Clearly, Sheets did not want that in this case, and I think there's a sound reason for doing that. It's not nefarious at all. She's setting the tone. And the tone is, we're not working this out very easily. I'm not coming begging to the table. I'm coming guns blazing. So you better be ready for that. Poppy, lawyer up. Sinclair, lawyer up. That's the message from Mars Argo. Guys, it's a lawyer habit calling everybody by their last name because that's how you refer to them in a document. And Argo, I realize, is not her last name, but she has two names in her stage name, and so it's my habit. So I apologize for that in advance. If I do slip up, I will try to refer to her as Mars Argo. Okay. So, moving on. It has been very painful to read the lawsuit Miss Sheets filed and to see the word abuser and my own name in the same sentence. Something very few people know is that one of the reasons I work the way I work and why I've made such efforts to conceal my identity is because I have my own history as a survivor of abuse. This legally documented trauma from my past is something I never wanted to make public because I did not want to relive it. Miss Sheets' publicity campaign has made that impossible. And, maybe, but here's the thing. If Mars Argo is going to argue a pattern of domestic violence, then certainly if Poppy finds it advantageous to bring up her own history with domestic violence, that might be useful. Now, I don't know if it will be useful or not because I don't know the details, and it really depends on the characterization you want your client to have to the judge or jury, the fact finder. Okay, sometimes it's useful to have a sympathetic client, a sympathetic defendant. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's useful to have a very unsympathetic defendant or client, someone who's a complete jerk to everybody. Sometimes that can be very helpful. So it all depends on how they want to frame it. And I wouldn't read too much into this here. It's possible that Poppy has done this on advice of attorneys, but I kind of doubt it. We'll see. We don't know yet. All right. I have known Miss Sheets for years, and she is well aware of the anguish I went through. In an attempt to manipulate me psychologically, Miss Sheets is now collaborating and maintaining an ongoing relationship with the exact man who took advantage of me when I was young and vulnerable, while at the same time naming me in a lawsuit with allegations of domestic abuse. It is shameful that Miss Sheets would try to exploit another female artist in this way for personal gain out of nothing more than bitterness and a desperate grab for fame. Don't take, again, you can't take any of these words, slings, insults as true, as correct, as representative of the truth, or anything even coming close, but they're going to be, they're framing this favorably to them in both ways. And clearly, this is an emotional thing for them. I say clearly, maybe it's not. Maybe they're just liars. It's possible. But I'm going to take them at their word. And that Mars Argo seems to genuinely feel like she was abused and that her art was stolen. And if your art is such an entrenched part of your identity that it is your profession, and then someone comes along and just takes that, obviously that's damaging. Both emotionally, financially, you can't just let that go. At the same time, if Poppy is being genuine and truthful here, and she knows that Sheets knows her history, and she thinks that Sheets is trying to exploit that history and use it against her and attack the art that she's making, that she may feel she created on her own, rather than as alleged stealing it from Mars Argo, then of course, Mars Argo is attacking Poppy where she lives, where she works, and where she makes her livelihood. That's going to be traumatic. It's going to be, it's going to hurt. So we're going to have some emotions here and some probably venomous barbs back and forth as this thing goes on, which is what's going to, frankly, it's what's going to make it interesting. A lot of lawsuits aren't interesting. Some of them have the right mix of celebrity, will cynically say narcissism, and then drama sprinkled in. When you get these big personalities into a room and they start hashing it out, it's going to be fireworks. So we'll see. Miss Sheets' claims of stalking, harassment, and abuse directed at Mr. Mixter are preposterous projections of her own actions. My creative partner is blameless, and I am confident this case will be dismissed. Well, I don't know if I would be confident that it would be dismissed. I think dismissal is a possibility, because the copyright claims are going to be exceedingly hard to prove. I don't know that the initial complaint filed by Mars Argo is a competent attack on the copyright infringement. I don't know. I feel like a better job could have been done or should have been done, but I'm not familiar with the artist's work. But based on the investment of the fans that I've seen in my very limited exposure, I feel like there's a better case that could have been made. I'm actually working on that video where I try to make a case for Mars Argo that I believe is better than the one that's made. But who knows? It's really tough to construct an argument, especially when you're not intimately aware of all the backstory. So I'm coming at this from an outside perspective. And it's important to note that the judge will also be coming at this from an outside perspective. So don't just dismiss me because I don't know the artist, because the judge probably won't either. And you need to understand that the people deciding this case are not you. They're not going to know what you know. They're not going to have the same perspectives and opinions. They're going to be going off what's on these documents and what they can understand from that. All right. I look forward to the coming days when I can speak in greater detail about my personal journey, one that Ms. Sheets is well aware of. We appreciate the fans who have stood by us. This is a matter that will be handled swiftly. We will carry on with our plans to release our art, and we will not let this frivolous lawsuit distract us. The truth will set you free. Poppy. All right. So a bit dramatic, but Poppy is setting her posture. Mars Argo has set the posture of, we're not doing this nice. We're going to have to do this ugly because of how this has worked out. And so now Poppy is saying, okay, I brought my gun to the gunfight, not a knife. And we'll see what happens when Poppy files a response, which I imagine is coming. I think she only has about a week left to file that. And same with Sinclair. And so that will be interesting. Now, I don't know, because I don't know when Poppy was served, and I don't know how the time limits are for California civil procedure. Specifically, again, it's way outside of my practice area, and each state does this stuff differently. So I don't have a good answer on exactly when it will be, but I'm guessing it would be in the next week to 2 weeks, depending on the intricacies of the filing. I'm surprised to see a statement like this. If Poppy is represented, I can imagine her attorneys say, don't talk about this publicly. Don't make these public statements. However, when dealing with celebrities, when dealing with people whose lives are broadcast to the world, Sometimes that's not an option. And so sometimes an attorney has to help craft these sort of statements to make sure that they're not legally damaging or that they're legally beneficial. This one doesn't appear to have anything damaging in it. It sets kind of a counter narrative and preps people for the facts. But I think this is more of a public statement. This is not intended to be legally helpful or hurtful or anything like that. It's an okay statement, and it sets the tone for what Poppy is intending to do. All right, let's take a quick look at these restraining orders and restraining order requests. So this is Corey Michael Mixter against Joshua Michael Moran. Apparently, people with the middle name of Michael are suspiciously close to being abusive. That's a joke, right? Get over it. The hearing date was set for September 14th, 2015 for Mixter. For Mariah Pereira, that's Poppy. I don't remember when her hearing date was, but it's not really important because neither of these were actually issued. So when they filed for the protective orders, they were immediately granted temporary restraining orders until a hearing could be commenced. That's kind of standard. If people express a genuine fear for their safety, they issue a temporary restraining order, then they have a hearing, and then they determine if the order should stand. In this case, Mixter, or Titanic Sinclair, had his order dismissed because they didn't find sufficient grounds to issue an order or to maintain a protective order. Okay, and then Poppy's actually looks like it was dismissed for a different reason. It says failure to prosecute, which makes me think, so both of these were filed on the same day, August 25th, 2015. I'm guessing when Mixter's claims were dismissed, then Poppy decided to not pursue the restraining order any further. And there are all sorts of reasons why this could happen. It's not so simple to say, this person did this to me, I need protection. You have to actually, because protective orders like this can give rise to criminal action if someone violates a protective order, there is a standard of proof that has to be met. Someone could beat you silly in an alley, and you could go in to try and get a restraining order against them and not be able to prove it was them for any number of reasons. Maybe it's just you too. You have your bruises go away. You don't have any photographic evidence. There's no witness of anything you went through. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that you can't prove it happened. So in that case, they may not find you in fear. If the other person, if it's literally this person assaulted me and the other person says, no, I didn't. Never met him in my life. It comes to this point where it's hard to lay down a factual basis. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I don't have access to these documents. I will see if I can get them, but I'm guessing they're not going to be public. Typically, restraining order documents are filed confidentially to protect the people involved. They do say they're not electronically available. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't get them from the county courthouse. I'll be reaching out to some contacts to see, but no promises there. If there is something that I can get my hands on, I will certainly report on it. As for Poppy, if she determined that it wasn't going to be worth it to pursue because Corey's case was thrown out, then a lot of people will just drop it. And if they don't show up, failure to prosecute the charge, that means there's nothing to do. Right? The judge isn't going to issue an order if the person doesn't proceed with requesting it. But let me state, there are a lot of reasons people back off of protective orders and have nothing to do with whether or not the abuse occurred. So it's very possible that some sort of abusive or stalking or intimidating behavior occurred between Moran and these two parties. It's possible. but we won't actually know what that is. Now, I'm guessing, since Poppy mentions it in the public statement, that if she issues an answer to Brittany Sheets or Mars Argo, that we'll get a glimpse of what she's saying. Let me say one more thing about this, though. It's really important to remember that Mars Argo's allegations against Poppy and Mixter are still allegations at this point. We don't have any evidence that there was a restraining order against Mixter for his alleged activity against Mars Argo. So having or not having a restraining order does not really matter in the terms of if this stuff happened or not. And also, the existence or non-existence of a restraining order does not matter on how we should read these things. You should read everything that comes from one author with a skeptical eye, because it's going to be written in their favor. So however the events transpired, whatever events did transpire, Sheets and Mars Argo is framing them in a way that's most beneficial to her, which will be domestic abuse. She will also be probably omitting a lot of her own actions that may have contributed to this. Now, I'm not saying that a victim is responsible for domestic abuse or anything like that. Don't mistake me. But sometimes a fight that is between two people, when you remove the actions of one party, looks very one-sided, right? If two people are in an argument and they both raise their voices and start throwing punches, and then you ignore the fact that one person threw a punch, the other person hitting back looks like assault until you realize that it wasn't. It was defense, or it was at least mutual. So take everything that Mars Argo says with a grain of salt. Take everything that Poppy says with a grain of salt. We'll see what happens when they actually start filing answers. These complaints and answers are made under oath, so we have to assume that they're telling the truth. But don't assume that it's the entire truth, because it's very possible that there is more to the alleged events than we got from Mars Argo's account. And once we get Moran and Pereira's responses, we're going to see those things tempered, and you're going to see a factual scenario that looks pretty different than what Mars Argo put forward. And then the court has to find out who's lying and who's telling the truth and what really happened. And they're going to have to piece this together, and there's going to be some give on both sides, I'm guessing. But anyway, so that's the big news for today. Poppy has released a statement. She has released these documents. These documents are an incomplete perspective of what happened. There was not a restraining order issued against Moran. Ultimately, initially, there were some temporary restraining orders issued, very standard procedure for a court to do that to ensure protection until the court can hear the idea, because you can't just walk into a courtroom and have a hearing. You have to schedule it out, usually a week or two. So, for example, this was filed on August 25th, and the hearing date was September 14th. So you've got 2.5 weeks in there before the court was able to hear anything on this case. So, but it is big news, because it means that Poppy is not looking at this point in time to negotiate this down or to come to some sort of quiet settlement. They are going to fight this out in the courts, as far as we can tell, and we'll see what happens once they actually issue some answers. But until then, like and subscribe to the channel if you like this. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I love to interact with you guys and answer questions, and if you disagree with me, feel free to challenge me in the comments. Like, I'm not saying I'm 100% right on any of this stuff. Just my opinion. Most of this stuff isn't legally related. So I'm just a guy commenting. And I'm happy to be given more evidence to change my opinions and to further refine my perspective on what's going on. So feel free to hit me up in the comments or in any of the social media stuff that you can find in the description. Also, check out those videos, the other videos, if you haven't watched them yet, and that'll give you a better glimpse of the whole case as it started, and then we'll keep watching it as it develops. So stay tuned, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys online. Peace.